Okay. Can y'all hear me? Let me see. Okay, very good. Hey, how y'all doing? Sorry about that. I'm still working on getting the stream all set up. So I tricked you. Just being quiet. Oh, shit. All right, hold on. Why is this shit still going in the background? Okay. Yeah, I gotta stop this thing from. Oh no. There we go. Shit. Okay. I can't see my cursor. Why does this always happen to me? There we go. All right. Is it that time again? The international intensifies. All right. Hey, Lucy, welcome. Glad to have you. Okay. How y'all doing tonight? I finally can look at the chat. Hey, Elijah, welcome, buddy. Glad you're here. Is someone meditating? What you mean? Um, the hat is back. That's right. Uh, hey, Cosmo Zombie. What you mean is someone meditating, TMKF? Um, you gotta, you gotta explain. I'm, uh, I'm a little bit. Oh shit. Yeah, I'm a little bit out of it today. I fucked up my medication, so I uh, I accidentally missed 2 doses in a row, and so I'm all like with a lot of antidepressants, you go into withdrawals if you miss a couple of days in a row. So I am not doing great, but we're surviving. I miss y'all on Twitter too. I wish I could. Uh, I wish they'd fix this shit so I could go back and hang out with y'all. Honestly, is I mean, when I was uh, thinking about quitting, I thought about it for one day, and a bunch of people was like, sent me a bunch of heartfelt messages, and I was like, wow, this is a good reason to stay on Twitter, even if there is a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, SSRI game. Hey, Beck. Okay, we got leftist fairy cow just followed. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Of course, I have not gotten my visuals back up yet for when people are following. So, Jason, I did start an alt, but I don't know if they kill my main account, alt just feels kind of weird. Cheer, thank you, Veclin. I appreciate that. Thank you, Coop. Coop, it's good to see you on stream. I feel like it's been a minute since I talked to you, so I appreciate that. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about how to talk to regular people about communism. Um, okay, cool. Thanks, Comrade Grimm. I appreciate that. Also, Beck, the fact that you gave 420, very. I see you. You're seen. You're appreciated. Shit. So, yes, very. Nowza is following. Okay, we got Nowza following. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, my partner was talking to some people last night about communism, and I realized that maybe a lot of y'all just don't have as much experience as we do with it, just because we tend to do it a lot. Um, so so yeah, this is going to be, I think, worthwhile to discuss because so many people have nervousness about it. So many people are like, well, can I just talk about socialism? Can I just ease people in? And I think so much of that comes from like this fear of, um, this fear of being rejected or this fear of punishment, right? Because we have been indoctrinated to see communists as, you know, evil, wild people hiding in the bushes with binoculars and, you know, just doing all kinds of bad stuff to their own people and wearing blue jeans that fall apart. And but somehow also running a giant military machine. So is like we've been indoctrinated with all this shit going on in the background of our minds, you know. Yeah, exactly, Jason. The idea that we're going to corrupt the children, we're going to like go. I mean, which is funny considering how much indoctrination happens in capitalist countries from the absolute youngest age possible. Because I mean, like you think about like a lot of kids have been experiencing hundreds of thousands of advertisements and capitalist messages before they are even able to talk. You know, because of how prevalent advertising is with you know tablets and such that are the main source for a lot of educational programming now for kids. So hey Elisa, I really want to come back to Twitter. I want to hang out with y'all again. I miss interacting with y'all. I honestly do. I mean, I'm gonna if I come back to Twitter, if I do end up going with an alt, if they keep me suspended, then I'll you know, I'll just try to set better boundaries with it. Um, but yeah, I'll be honest. It's like it has been kind of nice to be off Twitter, but at the same time, like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of my friends who I'm not seeing their thoughts. You know, like even people who have joined the Discord and hang out with me and T and Spittin' and a few of y'all who are in the chat. Um, you know, Twitter, that whole void shouting aspect of it, I kind of like because you know I get to hear y'all's thoughts that you would, you know, you just putting it out there, and I miss it, you know. Yeah, exactly, TMKF. Darth Aztec, I'm not quite suspended. They've done something real tricky where they've locked me out of my account, but they've left my account up. So it looks like I'm just ignoring people as they talk to me, but really, I am fully locked out. Yeah, yeah, Lucy. That's right. So anyway, um, I miss seeing your thoughts too, Lisa. We'll figure it out. I didn't do shit. That's what's funny, Darth Aztec. I didn't do shit. I literally didn't do shit. They just said there was suspicious activity. Like they didn't even like. I don't do shit. I don't get on other people's pages and say they should play in traffic or whatever, like some of our friends do. Maybe I will, Cosmo Zombie. Maybe I'll get on a different app. Um, but yeah. Anyway, um, so getting back to talking to regular people about communism. So I actually have found that most people have never had an earnest conversation with a communist. Most people have never talked to someone even for 5 minutes about the clear, like in a clear, concise way about what they believe is a communist. So you may be the first person that someone has talked to about your beliefs. And how often does that happen? Like people debate endlessly shit like, you know, is Bernie Sanders bad for the Democratic Party? Is AOC the future of liberalism? Like all that shit. Hey, comrade, clever name, welcome. But but a lot of times people haven't heard like an honest, disciplined communist just putting out their most basic beliefs. So what I find is sometimes when I talk to people, I will blow their fucking minds. So I mean, seriously, um, it's so easy to blow people's minds because you'll be spitting truths at them in a unapologetic, plain manner that libs have never done. I mean, really, when you talk about conservatives, right? Conservatives are used to libs shuffling and basically kind of apologizing their way through their beliefs and shit, and begging for people to listen. Communists don't do that, right? We just say what the fuck is real, and so as a result, people respect what we have to say so much more than the quote unquote rest of the left. Yeah, exactly, Darth Aztec. They don't have an agenda. They just want the status quo. I would say libs and conservatives both. Some conservatives have a quote unquote agenda, and some libs have things that they want, right? But as far as like they don't have a program. You know what I mean? They might have desires, but at the end of the day, they're not working for it. They're not willing to do anything for it, and as a result, and also they have cognitive dissonance. That's something that's really important. Like I know white dudes like me love to talk about cognitive dissonance. It's like a meme at this point, but it's true. Like libs have this cognitive dissonance where they they just they cannot speak plainly about things like what happens with the police, why there's been 50 years of black people mostly voting Democratic and still things being worse for them, right? They feel the need to, yeah, you say play devil's advocate, Grim. Absolutely, they feel the need to show both sides of things, to give credit where credit's due to their opponents and stuff, right? So they have this totally weak way of going about things, you know. Sorry, trans DPRK. When I say cognitive dissonance, what I mean is like kind of how they explained it to me whenever I was going through therapy, of like having two contrary ideas in my head at one time, and like the fact that they can both exist simultaneously. So libs have that, right? The belief that all people are created equal and that they want fair treatment for everybody, but also being okay with the police. That is, in my opinion, cognitive dissonance. It's simply as it related to like how it was explained to me in my cognitive behavioral therapy. That's all. Um, yeah, exactly. Anarcho druidism. People talk about Mr. Potato Head, or Potato Head as it is now, and getting like actually upset about it. It's just wild to me. Silliness. So the thing is, when you point it out as silliness, as in like when you talk about your real program as a communist, and you point out some of this other shit for the kayfabe, like professional wrestling type drama that it is, people can listen. People really can listen. So let's get into it. Let's just get right into it. This is great. This is already making me feel better. I'll be real. Don't fuck up your antidepressants, kids. It will make you not okay. I had to fucking um kayfabe is the word you're looking for. I'll put it in the chat. Um, Show up 15 minutes late and get right into the content. Okay, yes, technically true, Exquisitor Orbis, but I don't tell people that because I don't want people to be showing up 15 minutes after that. Because it always happens. I start later and later because I want my friends to get in here and be ready to go. Vecklin, thank you so much for subscribing. I really appreciate that. I just realized recently that I have received almost like through the Twitch subscriptions, I have received almost $300 since I started streaming, and I just want y'all to know that every penny of that has gone to mutual aid funds. So I appreciate when y'all subscribe. There are other people who you should donate to, perhaps for y'all who are thinking about subscribing. But yeah, I really appreciate that. Holy Oregano, thank you so much for following. Okay. Darth Aztec. Yes, I am over 200 pounds. How much over 200 pounds? I can't tell you. But I am over 200 pounds. All right, so this is my disclaimer, all right? These are just my fucking opinions. You can have different opinions. You can absolutely believe, that you don't need to talk to people in this way, that other methods work better, right? And that's your right. I ain't trying to step on people, you know what I mean? So anyway, let's see. Everyone has to figure out what works for them through practice. All right. Thank you, Belvion, for following. I appreciate that. Practice is the way that you figure out how to talk to people, not by reading, not even by this stream necessarily. This is just some starter ideas, but the actual way that you learn what's going to work with you and another individual, right? Because you are going to be the variable that stays the same. The other people are going to be the thing that changes, right? So what works with you and other people is, that's what you're going to figure out. So these are starting points in my beliefs. Please only take them as that. It's going to be it's going to seem like I'm saying this is what you need to do, but I'm simply saying this is what, if I was going to give myself advice, what I would tell me to do. All right, that's it. That's all it's for. Elisa, you You cannot see. You cannot see. Um, so, so yeah. Continuing. So why should we even talk about communism? Um, TMKF, yeah. End of story. There you go. Very good. So one, I think this is our first priority because we are nowhere near revolution, right? So yeah, you can be doing 3 gun drills. You can be, buying like bleeding kits for protests and shit like that that you're almost never going to use. But all of that shit really, I feel like, is far future shit. Whereas in the meantime, in the right now thing, if we say that every action that we do should be pointed towards revolution, then the immediate actions matter just as much as the long-term planning actions because they are all pointed towards revolution, right? So the immediate actions that I think are necessary are talking to people about communism, right? And I don't just mean talking to people that you know, and I don't mean talking to just people who are like you. I think it's very valuable to talk to a wide variety of people about communism, right? Hey, that's a cool one. Mass line is when communists push the car until it turns over and the people drive it themselves. That's good. I don't know where you heard that, Graham, but that's real good. Darth Aztec, it's ingrained into our culture that communism is bad and you shouldn't question it. Exactly. So, so the first time you just made it up. Damn, Grant, that's awesome. The first time you tell somebody about communism, you may be shocking their socks off. You know what I mean? And that's why I think it can be our first priority because it can actually get results. Like bringing it out, bringing it up into the open, and having people consider it for the first time is praxis, right? So we're not street preachers. We're not just yelling at people. We're trying to have conversations with people, and uh, they are going to spit a lot of bullshit back your way. But the ideas that you plant in their head, who knows? Even if they don't have fruition today, they may in a few months when they look at their own life, when they look at their struggles, and they start to realize that the through line is, the bourgeois liberal democracy that we live in, the white supremacist upholding state that we are all subjects of, right? They may start realizing that we are not in a steadily progressing upward type situation. We are in a getting worse type situation, and the seeds you plant may help them reframe the way that they look at things. Um, yeah, exactly. Normalizing communism is very important. Just saying like, hey, look at me. I'm a normal person. I mean, I'm not super normal, but I'm pretty normal. I can at least have a conversation with you. I'm the kind of person that you might want to get a beer with, right? So I am both a communist and the kind of person that you might feel okay getting a beer with, right? I'm both a communist and someone that you wouldn't mind working with, right? You wouldn't mind spending 40 hours a week with at a job. Those things are important, you know. I agree to hit good talking about marijuana legalization starting with normalization. I agree. So okay, continuing. It's not that scary to most people when they actually hear what we believe. And this is so. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple nights ago, and I've been working on him with some of the communism stuff. But you know, I hadn't laid it all out real clearly for him. So, last night we were talking and I just laid it all out. I was like, give me 10 minutes. Let me lay this shit out. Or 2 nights ago or something. Anyway, so after laying it all out, right? It, like, he was like, I'm not scared anymore. I was so scared because he's a minority and he's queer and he's just, he was very worried about the treatment of, us queers and the treatment of minorities under communism. But when I laid out like what has to happen in order for communism to work, like specifically the intersectional aspect of it and the decolonial aspect of it, and the fact that white conservative settler socialism, class reductionist type communism just simply will never get off the ground. He's like, oh shit, all right, well that's okay, cool. So Um, Thank you, Exquisitive Orbis. I appreciate you saying you'd actually like to get a beer with me. I would like to get a beer with you as well. I'll be drinking a non-alcoholic beer, but still, I would like to hang out one day. And that's awesome, TMKF. I'm glad you've been talking to people. It's how it's done. Um, so, Tempest, we'll get into that in a second. All right. But finally, what Grim was saying before about mass line being not just driving people around, but rather pushing a broke down car and then um, helping people start to drive it themselves. That's right. So we have to respect people, and one of the steps to really respecting people is talking to them openly. You can't be afraid to talk to somebody and say that you're one of them and that you respect them. You know what I mean? Yeah, Darth Aztec. I'm an alcoholic, and also also the medicine that I'm on does not mix with alcohol. So yeah, non-alcoholic beer or a soda at the bowling alley. Absolutely. So basic steps. First, let's just talk, before we even talk about what we're going to talk about, let's talk about comportment. Let's talk about the way you hold yourself, the way you speak, right? Um, awesome, Exquisitive Orbits. Um, be proud of what you're saying, right? We don't have to steal valor from the communists of the past to be proud of the tradition that we are a part of. We can say that we do not make concessions to evil, right? We don't say that a little bit of white supremacy is okay. We don't say that a certain number of babies dying from malnutrition is okay. Liberals have to do that. Conservatives have to do that. We do not. Our views are that this shit is not necessary. We can end it, and they choose not to, right? So when you tell people like that, straight up, right, that the regular politicians have to make excuses for the number of children dying in the United States due to malnutrition, for the number of black people that are locked up for no reason in the United States through no fault of their own, but simply for the color of their skin, right? They have to make excuses for that. We can say that shit ain't right. All right. Um, what kind of people left Cuba during Castro's time? Okay, I'm gonna get back to that, but real quick, anarcho-druidism. A really funny thing about that is, okay, if you left Cuba during Castro's time, that meant that the dictatorship of Batista, who was there before Castro, was a-okay with you, right? So so it wasn't authoritarianism that you were afraid of. It wasn't a dictatorship that you were afraid of. It was a certain kind of quote unquote authoritarianism that those Cubans left Cuba for, right? So I think it's pretty funny to talk about how if you stayed behind for Batista and it was Castro who made you move, then you have some things you have to look at. So you want to be bold, right? Don't make small claims. Don't make tiny baby claims, right? Talking about labor unions and stuff is good, right? But if your revolutionary program is more than just labor unions, like if you actually believe that the only way through is by revolution, that we cannot vote our way to freedom, you have to be able to explain that, right? Because if you just say, wouldn't it be nice for us to get into labor unions, then a person who you're talking to has heard that before, right? Stronger labor unions. Okay, yeah, I know, I'm down with that. But if you say the very bold statement of, we are headed for a climate catastrophe, and we will never be able to solve white supremacy while we have the current government in place, that's, that is suddenly something that is a avenue for discussion, right? Somebody's going to want to hear perhaps a little bit more about what you're trying to say. And a lot of people are afraid that if they go too hard too fast, that the other person is going to shut down. But I find people in America especially, they love a little bit of drama. They love a little bit of zazz, a little bit of sprinkling of spice. So if you say something that's a bold claim, if you say something that is something that's new and maybe a little exciting, people oftentimes want to hear more. They may not like it. They may not really want to hear it. they may get mad as an immediate reaction, but it's going to be a whole lot more engagement, we can say, than if you just say something, a little bit, just a little bit more than something they've heard before. You know what I mean? So, continuing. No problem, anarcho-druism. So, finally, be honest, right? So, if this is all the things that you commit to, right? So I commit before I talk to somebody, I commit to being honest, right? So if I have doubts about something, if I have doubts about a former communist country or a certain leader, if I have doubts about our own revolutionary program, if someone asks me specifically about one of those things, I don't shy away from it, right? Because libs do that. Libs are unable to admit when their leaders are bad. Republicans are unable to say, yeah, Trump messed up this country, right? Some of them are growing balls nowadays, but most of them weren't, right? For the first 3 years of Trump's presidency, I know a lot of those motherfuckers were very anti-Trump, but they just kept a lid on it because to them, party politics, you know what I mean? It comes before everything. So if you make a commitment to talking about both the problems and the solutions that people came up with in the past and how you would do it different, how it's important to plan for these things in advance, you're already speaking in a different way than they've ever heard someone talk about party politics, right? Hey, Jess, welcome. Glad you're here. That's really funny, Exquisite Vorbis. The Fed's trying to find anarchist leaders on Twitter. I mean, there are some, but I find that mostly it's just people who lead by, who get that unjustifiable hierarchy due to being popular, right? And yeah, like you say, a lot of times that's because they are bombastic and therefore they get canceled, right? So the true people who are like sharing good ideas and shit, a lot of times that shit just makes its way through the anarchist community, and there isn't necessarily some big ass account that gets a lot of love. Anyway, continue. So that's number one: pre-work, preparing your own comportment, preparing yourself with your spiritual principles, with your plan of attack before you even get in there, right? Who are you going to be? How are you going to represent communism to people, right? So, with strength. Above all, pride, boldness, and honesty are forms of strength. So, research in advance and know your stuff. No, Jess, that is not what's going on. So I do think this is important, right? You can get run around, you can get people to bring up shit that is part of your own indoctrination that you will be maybe not afraid, but you will be uncomfortable answering because you haven't thought over the issue yourself, right? So y'all have got to, even if you don't read theory as such, right? I'm not one of them read theory guys, but I am one of those engage with theory guys, right? You have to know the fundamental ideas of what you're fighting for. You have to have a few concise sentences that you can even say in the mirror in advance for, like, this is what I believe to be good, this is what I believe to be bad, this is how I think things are now, this is the way that I think they can change. You got to be able to say each of those things individually, right? Y'all quit talking about how hot I am in the chat. It's going to make me uncomfortable. I'm going to turn off my video. So anyway, you also want to know common questions. The common questions that you'll get, like a lot of times people have just very much the same questions again and again, right? It ain't nothing surprising about what people are going to ask about. So what I want you to do is get ready with some canned answers, right? You ain't got to present all that at first. You just keep it in the can, and then whenever they ask, you have a concise and again, bold and honest answer for these common questions. That is valuable because when people feel like they ask you a gotcha, but you have an answer ready for it, then they're like, oh, damn, okay, this person really knows what they're talking about. Um, am I, can I give you an example? Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually have a whole list of examples planned out for later, but I'll give you a sneak preview right now. All right. So when people say to me, like, well, what about authoritarianism? What about democracy? Like, don't like wasn't there like no freedom in the in socialist states in the past? Or in the current, like they talk about DPRK and in China and such, right? And what I say is, we live in a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, right? We live in a place where the rich control the government, the rich control the way things are set up as far as the way that work is done. They control every aspect of our lives. We have had massive growth in productivity, like 40, 50 times growth in productivity, and no growth in real wages, in buying power. So that means that they have purposefully set up the amount that things cost, the amount that you have to pay for rent, and the amount of money that you get, and the amount that you pay in taxes to keep you at a subsistence level, right? So whenever we all agree on some things like, hey, wouldn't it be better if we didn't all have to work whenever we have a baby, right? Wouldn't it be better if people got maternity leave? Or, hey, wouldn't it be better if we have all this extra productivity? Shouldn't we be able to afford medicine for everybody, right? When everybody agrees on these good things, right? But yet we are still living in a place that has been calculated so that, just like you say, Grim, it's been calculated so that we're kept at a subsistence level to where these things that everybody agrees is good, everybody agrees we can afford, but we can't have it for some reason, then you know we don't live in a democracy, right? You know that whatever leaders we're able to put in, whatever nice sounding things they say, whatever, democratic noises they make, whatever highfalutin propaganda we're subjected to, right? Those things are bullshit when you look at the face of it, because productivity has gone through the roof and we haven't been able to have these basic things. And in fact, things are getting worse, right? People used to be able to afford houses. Now they can't. People used to be able to afford to have 5, 6 kids if they wanted to. Now they can't even have one, right? So, yeah, exactly, Exquisitive Orbis, right? So these are the kind of things that I think, like if someone asks you about, like, what about freedom? What about innovation? What about, Holodomor, what about whatever the thing is that people are going to ask about because they always ask about it with communism, just have a canned answer, right? And it don't got to be the best canned answer of all time, but a little bit of passion and a little bit of straight truth goes a long way, right? So, Jason, give me a second. Hold on to that question. In fact, copy it, put it to the side. We're going to get to some slides later with that because I do want to answer it. I can't answer it right now. Also, you want to talk about common lies to debunk and the wrongs to admit. All right, so this is something that some people might disagree with me on. TMKF, talking about that 1 million zillion dead. Yeah. So there are lies, specifically from the Black Book of Communism, those type things, where they drastically inflate the number of people who died, and they change the reason for why they died, right? So they assign to communism, they assign evil intent, and to capitalism, they assign accidental, unforeseen consequences of things that they wish they could have fixed, right? They're always putting, as far as like the reason things happen goes, they're always putting the most calculated, evil, genocidal type intent on the communist countries, and saying that capitalist countries absolutely would have helped if only they could, right? Or if only the people didn't get in their way as they were trying to help, especially when they're talking about Africa or South America, right? So, yeah, I will just say that specifically when you're talking about like things like Holodomor, right? We can say that it was wrong for the United States to only allow for the Soviet Union to trade for machinery with grain because they knew that certain areas of the Soviet Union were prone to famine, and they knew that if they just waited long enough, that if they were giving out grain, that they would have a point where they would not have enough grain, and it would be easy to control them that way, because that's what that's not what communists do. That's because that's what the United States does, right? They control Africa through starvation today, right? So of course this is what they were doing to the Soviet Union back then. So we can say that yes, it happened. There were many people who starved. One, it was nowhere near as many as what is reported to this day. Two, it was not a genocidal evil thing to do, because why would they want to do that, right? Why would they be trying to build up an area for manufacturing, like rapidly trying to modernize an area so that it could give to the rest of the Soviet Union and kill off all the people in that area? It doesn't make any sense, right? Just at the face of it, purposefully starving out a certain part of your population makes no sense whenever you're trying to rapidly modernize. Places that go through starvation events have difficulty modernizing for many decades afterwards, right? So it's a stupid thing to do to cut out all of your labor power for no reason. There are other things you can do besides forcibly starving people. So we can also say that the Soviet Union, for example, sent some of the grain stores into Ukraine, right, to try to help out with the starvation going on there. So anyway, I'm not here to debate the Holodomor. What I'm saying is you're going to hear these things. So if you can admit that something did happen, but challenge the degree to which it happened and the intent behind it, you might be in a good place, right? So let's see. Got a lot of stuff going on in chat. Okay, damn. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I can't keep up so much. I was talking too much, and I missed out on the chat. Jess, I'm sorry. I do care about your dating woes. I do. I think I feel bad for all my single friends, all my friends who are trying to date right now. Dating under Corona has got to be very difficult. So, Elisa, does that mean we're gonna have problems here in the U.S. in the future? Yeah, absolutely. You kidding? Yes, absolutely. So, haven't gotten laid in a year. Damn, sorry, TMKF. Continuing. You want to state concretely what you are fighting for. And I don't know if I can emphasize this enough. All right? Saying the good shit that you believe in, right? Saying the things that really matter to you, right? Like for example, I care about starving kids. I care about people getting medicine that should be free, be it having prices jacked up to where poor people can't afford it, right? I'm talking about how they use debt through education in order to literally keep us in bondage to the workforce, right? I'm talking about the way that my non-white comrades are treated and how it absolutely has not changed in all the time since the civil rights movement. Things have been getting worse and worse and worse for my non-white comrades, and how in many ways we could say that they are subjected to a new kind of colonization within the United States, right? So these are things that I care deeply about fixing, right? I care about making sure that people have their needs met. I care about democracy. I care about making sure that if a government tries to do something to hurt the people, that the people are armed and they can fight back against it, right? Freedom from violence, exactly. Freedom to defend your own neighborhood, freedom to decide how you want to set up governance in your own area, right? These are things that I believe in, and it's not very complicated. None of the things that I just said was very complicated at all, right? And what I can say is those are all things that we can do day one, right? We can get rid of houselessness the first day that a communist revolution is in effect, right? The very first day, because we have all these houses sitting empty. We can get rid of hunger because we have all this shit that just gets thrown away for no reason, right? So these things that I'm saying to you, I'm sure a lot of y'all in the chat care a lot about it too, right? Y'all care about hungry kids and old people having to eat dog food and work until they can't work no more and then still trying to work because they have no money, right? I know y'all care about people being unhoused for no reason other than the fact that they missed one rent payment during a pandemic, right? So all those things that I'm talking about here are things that I think you probably care about too. So have your list ready. What do you give a shit about, right? Whatever you give a shit about, that's what you start with. That's what you lead with. And you say these things will never be fixed under capitalism, right? Because they are purposefully not fixed right now. It costs more for the government to keep people unhoused than it does to house them, right? It costs more to have, especially the most poor people, to have their health issues exacerbated the way that they are and how they oftentimes end up in state hospitals, right? They like the prevention that we are not given is way cheaper than how much things cost on the other side for us as a country, right? So we can say um, there are reasons why these things exist in the United States, and whatever the reasons they are, whoever it's serving, right? That's a longer conversation. But we know these things can be fixed, and they are purposefully not fixed. So the government is the problem, and the government and an economic system are not separable. It is all connected. The simple fact that economics are controlled by companies that also control the government, right, means that you can no longer ever separate economic systems and government systems. So let's see what y'all are talking about. Talking about damn, y'all really going off in the chat. Sorry, my brain is a little slow right now because of the because of the medication issues I'm going through. So if I can't keep up with chat too good today, I apologize. I appreciate y'all talking to each other and having fun. And you know what's funny is like sometimes I have this like this feeling that like I personally need to keep up with chat, but I notice with some of my friends who are streaming is that a lot of times they'll jump into chat and look at what people are talking about and interact, and they'll stream a bit, and it's like, you know, they do a good job with that. Like Comrade Kenny does good with that. Silver does good with that. Left flank vets do very good with that. So I'm gonna try to be better with that as far as like letting y'all go, letting y'all be free, talk, talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, y'all know how it goes. Hell yeah, left flank, Jeep State. The communist circle, yeah. It's like, I mean, what I like about this is that Twitch is kind of like, especially these streamed lessons, Twitch is like class, but it's like you can pass notes and goof off in the chat while class is going on. I wish that I had class like that when I was growing up, right? Where I could talk to my friends a little bit, but then also listen to what the teacher's talking about, you know what I mean? Like, I wish I had that growing up. Thank you, Platypus Trainer, for the follow. I appreciate you. So yeah. Learn to watch out for when someone addresses you directly because Twitch viewers typically do goof off sometimes. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'll just watch out. Y'all bold my name or all caps my name when you're saying Gomer. I know I'm Exquisite Vorbis. I know I got to work on that, but I haven't done it yet. I'm gonna do like a special stream where I work out all these fucking bugs, and then y'all don't have to show up. But if you do, it's fine. But I'm gonna try to figure out how to make things better. Like for example, make chat not disappear so fast. That's an easy thing that I think I can actually fix right now, but I just haven't done yet. Live on stream tech support, exactly. All right. So, talking here, this is my 4-point basic step program for how to talk to people about communism. All right. Your comportment, your research in advance, what's good, what's bad, right? What's good, what's bad, do your research, and decide how you want to talk to people. That's it. Straight up. That's what you need. That's what you need, all right? Dr. Chrome, thank you for following. I appreciate that. Platypus trainer, I need to cuss more. All right. Hold on. Do I need to break out my guns more too? Shit. Oh, Dr. Chrome saying you have to share everything with everyone. Are you talking about under communism? If you're saying do we have to share everything with everyone, then yeah, I think we do not. That's the difference between personal and private property. But you know, we could talk more about that later. You can DM me as well. No problem there. I answer whispers. Thank you, leftist fairy cow. I appreciate that. So, continuing. You have to share your toothbrush under communism. It is the way it is. I hope you brush your teeth good, because when you have to share your toothbrush under communism, you got to worry about the next person who's going to use your toothbrush. You know what I mean? Watch that shit. Make sure that the person who uses your toothbrush after you gets a clean toothbrush. That's what communism is really about. It's really trying to make sure that everybody's mouth stays clean with that same toothbrush, such that nobody has to feel bad about putting that toothbrush back in their mouth. You know what I mean? You need to swap spit under communism. Exactly. Let's see. Thank you for the resubscription, Port Nickel, and I really appreciate you. I appreciate whenever you talk in the chat. You are a really cool person. Just give up. We ain't starving to death. Millions anytime soon with this shit. All right, free mans for teas. Oh, Grim, you got to him first. Shit. So, Red the Destroyer, thank you so much for your follow. I appreciate you. Okay, so this is just getting a little bit deeper into what I was talking about before, right? Overcoming indoctrination is very hard, right? So you have to have that kind of good comportment. You have to be able to straight up be able to feel confidence in your expression of your belief, right? Because that indoctrination is going to let them feel like they're getting one over on you, like they're like the lack of free thought that they have, which they have been trained to think is free thought, right? That they are going to be teaching you about your silly little communist butt who doesn't understand freedom, doesn't understand the way the world works, right? That's the energy that's going to be coming from anyone, from grandmas to dudes to anybody who has not really thought about this shit. So you have to be that comported, calm, ready to talk straight type attitude, having the hard-hitting questions, but not trying to do gotcha, simply saying, look, this is the way the world is, right? You can't deny that this, that, the other is the way the world is, right? So that indoctrination is going to be challenged, like as the deep midbrain propaganda, not even thinking about it, subconscious indoctrination is going to be challenged as much as the individual talking points, right? So yeah, it's important. The delivery is important. So let me just say one thing. Somebody earlier on in the chat, we had did you ban them? Viva la Revolution. Hell yeah. Have you ever had it, man? Oh, you timed out Dr. Chrome. All right, Grim. So anyway, Dr. Chrome, if you're still around, if you're listening, I just want to say that under capitalism, you will absolutely be put in jail if you do not do a job, right? If you choose not, like as you say, if you choose not to work, if you can't pay your fucking rent and you end up, quote unquote, owing the government money, or quote unquote owing a landlord money, or whatever. If you try to sleep on a park bench, yeah, your ass will get put in jail for vagrancy. So guess what? You legally have to have a job under capitalism, except you technically don't. But in actuality, in function, in the way that things always go down, you do, right? So that's one thing that I think everybody needs to really think about here. This is one of the things that I tell people all the time, right? Just because something isn't a direct law, right? If the way that the law is enforced is one way and is consistently one way, right? If the way that the law is enforced is always, for example, racist, or if it always, for example, benefits the rich, regardless of whatever law is on the books, that's the real law. The enforcement is the law, right? And that's even a legal precedent. But also, if there isn't a law for one thing, but there's a law about everything else surrounding it, then that really means that that one thing that they can't say, the quiet part that they won't say out loud, that's the real law, right? And so much of what we have, like, oh yeah, we don't have debtors' prisons, but if you do anything else besides work a job and pay your little paltry wages and subsist, if you do anything else and you don't have family members who can take care of you, then guess what? You're going to debtor's prison. They won't call it that, but you are going to debtor's prison. Hey, Ghost Coalition, welcome. I appreciate you saying hello, and you can feel free to chat. You ain't got to lurk at all. Yeah, we have to work under capitalism or we die. We hardly get enough of our labor value back. Under communism, we democratically get to decide how much labor value does for everyone. Sure. And I'm talking about lower form of communism right now, Karl Marx. I'm talking about socialism. It's difficult to say exactly how it's difficult to say how communism will be set up. We can say some things very clearly, but we can't say everything, right? But we can say the things that we want under a transition state very easily. It's very simple to talk about what's necessary in the transition state. So, yeah, capitalism fought to keep slavery and child labor, so there's that. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it looks like we're getting more people coming in talking, doing some troll stuff. So that's cool. Yeah, how about the millions that died to establish and keep capitalism running? Exactly. If we did a black book of capitalism, it would sure be a lot more than the black book of communism. Absolutely. Thank you, Ghost Coalition. I appreciate that. 65 viewers. That only shows me as having 56. Is this a dyslexia thing, or are you just having showing more viewers than me? Shit. So, finally, I want to say one very important thing. Damn, y'all got me at 67. Y'all, before I get back to this shit, if we get to 75 viewers regularly, like if I start streaming 3 times a week and we actually get me to Twitch partner, I don't know, I'll do something. I'll donate $1,000 to charity or something. I don't know. We can get something crazy going, because I don't think it's gonna happen for another year or something. But yeah, if we actually get there, if we actually get up to the requirements for making partner, we'll plan a pizza party for the class. Darth Aztec, to get partner, you have to have 75 average viewers. You have to have 25 hours streamed in a month, and you have to have something like that. 25 hours streamed, and then 12 different times streaming or something like that. Charity stream, yeah, Zoom pizza party. I'll send everybody $5 to buy a pizza. Anyway, it's not going to happen for a long time, Platypus Trainer, so we ain't got to worry about that. I'd have to add a 3rd stream first. But libs are apologetic, all right? This is something that I want to talk about. When libs explain themselves, they always are asking someone to have a heart. They're always asking people to do things. Shit, thank you, Ghost Coalition. I appreciate that. You know I appreciate you, Ghost. Chuds are always very snarky, right? they're always like they're always fucking doing shit like, coming at you with like a like they're making fun of you, right? And so as a result, both chuds and libs weaken their own message by doing that, because we are straightforward, because we don't play games and shit. um, we are able to sound adult in a way that libs and chuds just can't sound. um, so do I have shout outs? No, Grim, I haven't figured any of that shit out yet. I love the no yeah for sure from Ghost Coalition. You know what I mean? I think that shit's funny as hell. Um, but anyway, damn, Ghost, you going wild over here. I'm gonna have to give back some fucking subs over on your channel too. um, so let's see. Y'all are talking up some good shit in the chat, so I really appreciate that. Um, yeah, I miss you on Twitter too, Ghost. I really wish I could get back. Maybe they'll let me back in eventually. Cosmo Zombie, that rules. That is very cool. So, oh yeah, I got to get Nightbot working too. Sorry about that. Dorian Sapiens, yeah, we're trying to get Nightbot set up. Anyway, one day, maybe before Friday, we'll get this shit set up. So, if y'all don't exactly understand what I mean when I say libs are apologetic, I want you to think about how people talk about anti-racism, right? How a lot of times there is this pleading type aspect, especially to white people talking about it, like we have to blah blah blah. Um, you know, there's a certain aspect that doesn't talk about the plain facts of life, that doesn't talk about materialism, that always talks about idealism, right? So whenever people are trapped in idealism and they're not talking about, like, who has the money, who's in the prison, um, like the simple facts of history, right? When people are talking all about the world of ideas and leaving all that material reality shit aside, then they're going to be speaking in a very, like, a pleading kind of way a lot of times. So because we stay in the material world, because we talk about things as far as like how much has changed, who has the money, how many hours are working, what kind of problems society has, who's getting sick, who's getting taken care of, right? Those kind of things, right? We sound grounded. So that is one thing that will always separate libs from communists, regardless of if libs eventually even say they want the same thing that we want, because they live in this world of ideas, because they reject materialism. They're always going to sound out there. But when you tell people the way shit is, like when you tell people about CIA coups, if you tell people about the way that we talked about growing efficiency at work, but not growing wages, right? Things like that. If you always stay in those kind of like who's getting the money, who's benefiting, who's getting hurt type arenas, then people can't refute that as easily, right? They can always refute the world of ideas, but they can't refute the facts. So, yeah. You don't understand chuds or where chuds come into this. Okay, Lucy, I was sorry. I shouldn't use chuds necessarily as a shorthand for all Republicans, but I do believe that the entire Republican Party is moving towards that insecure capitalism, open fascism type thing. So yeah, the chuds being snarky is very important. If you think about like Ben Shapiro, if you think about the people who are the talking heads on Fox News, if you think about like your average like kind of chuddy uncle, or your fucking, maybe your dad, like a lot of times they'll be like, one day when you're older, you'll understand. Yeah, everybody's idealistic at 25, but when you own a house, then you understand when you have to pay taxes what the problem really is with the government. Right? Whenever you have shit like that, that whole attitude that so many Republicans have, yeah, MAGA chuds, exactly. Whenever you have that whole thing of like them coming from this place of like, oh, I know better than you, you're just an idealistic child, right? Whenever you really spit hard facts at them, they fucking crumble, right? The fact that we're straightforward, the fact that we stay in material reality, their whole snark thing that puts libs off, the things that like libs shake and tremble and get caught up and they can't speak, right? When we have like, okay, well, you can say all that shit if you want, but let's get back to what I was talking about, which is the real world, right? As in you spit some clean facts and they can't really do anything with that, right? That is very important because chuds respect that, right? They don't respect people showing weakness. They don't respect people trying to plead with them. But if you say, I don't engage with your bullshit, I'm not going to follow you down whatever path you're trying to take me on, because what matters is this right here. What matters is this material reality that I'm trying to tell you about, right? They respect that. So you got to have unfounded confidence and arrogance and speak through your nose. Yep, that is how you do Ben Shapiro. You don't like that voice, Jess? I'm sorry. I won't do it to you in person. No problem, Lucy. No problem at all. Okay, so all that being said, let them navigate, all right? You don't let them drive, but you let them navigate. They can tell you, hey, I'm kind of interested in seeing that landmark over there, right? So what does that mean? Like taking this back to the real world and outside of an allegory, right? You want to have people giving you what they're really curious about, interacting with you on a good faith basis, right? You don't want them to be controlling the conversation. You don't want them to ask you a question, you give an answer, they just immediately ask you another question without responding whatsoever to your answer, right? No problem, Jess. So that happens a lot, especially like if you get used to talking to chuds about communism, you'll see this shit because they end up, the MAGA people really end up internalizing a lot of the way of speaking and the talking points of people like Ben Shapiro, all right? So when they internalize all this shit, thank you, Karl Marx, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. When they internalize all this shit, they start speaking in that way, right? So they'll do that Gish Gallop thing of like you make a point, they immediately ask another question, they immediately say some kind of bullshit talking point, and then they ask another question before you've even had time to answer the first question, in order to make you feel like kind of rushed and off kilter, right? So you come back, you bring it back, you get calm, and you say, okay, I hear you asking all those questions. Hold on a second. Hold on to that thought. Because I want to answer your first question first. And you sometimes say, I think the key idea here, and get their buy-in, right? Because this is important. They don't ever wait for buy-in. They always make bad faith arguments and then say, so I think what you're saying is that blah, 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 this thing that you absolutely did not say, but this is what I'm saying that you're saying, right? We don't do that shit. We say, is this what you're concerned about? And when they say yes, right? Then you say, this is how this relates, right? This is how we see that from a communist perspective, right? And when you take that calm step-by-step tone and you don't allow them to gallop and ask you 100,000 questions, right? They get it pretty quickly. In fact, a lot of them will stop doing that gallop thing pretty quickly, right? They will start actually, I mean, in my experience, they start interacting in better faith. Now, they'll always throw a little bit of that gallop back in a bit, right? They can't help it. They gotta keep going with it, but you'll be able to better guide the conversation and keep it on things that matter. Because they're always going to drive it towards bullshit, towards some Republican talking point, right? It is inevitable when you're talking to a Republican that they're going to drive it to a Republican talking point. Similarly, liberals will do the same. Liberals, when arguing with a communist, will start bringing in very Republican-sounding talking points, right? Which is because fundamentally liberals are not that different from Republicans. Oh shit, y'all talking about QAnon in the chat? Oh boy. Yeah, that's how Rose Gomer sounds, Exquisite Vorpus, absolutely. Okay, so it is always okay, finally, it is always okay to say, if they start bringing up some bullshit that does not matter, right? For example, if they start bringing up, like, if you're talking to a lib, the lib starts bringing up things like representation, right? And you can very easily say, like, if they say, oh, it's so, we do have things getting better and better. We had Obama. We have a representation now in the government that we never had before. So how can you be trying to get rid of something when we're just at the point of it finally working out for our poor, marginalized comrades, right? Because they start saying shit like comrades. Libs love to throw in a little bit of communist language, right? Oh shit, hey comrade kitty, what's going on? So when they say that shit, you can very easily say, like, yes, representation matters, but it just isn't that important when you consider that 1/3 of black men are somewhere in the penal system, right? Either in prison or out and on parole or with a record, right? And so you say representation matters, but this matters as well. So we can't be satisfied with representation alone whenever we have these other huge systemic issues that have no reason for existing other than upholding white supremacy and capitalism, right? Free labor based on racism, right? That's why we have the prison system that we have. So you can say all of these really nice bones that they throw us, of course, are nice, but what's really important is the material conditions that people are kept in this country, right? And the material conditions include the racist way that the organization of production is kept. So, when I'm just trying to say, at the end of the day, it is okay to say what you're talking about. The issue that you bring up is not as important as this other issue, especially when the other issue that you are bringing up is obviously on the face of it more important than whatever bullshit they're trying to throw your way, right? Okay, so let me get back on the chat. I'm really having a hard time keeping up with chat, y'all. I apologize for that. Thank y'all for dropping people's Twitch names in the chat, their links. One day I'm going to get Nightbot set up. Maybe tonight. Who knows? Maybe I'll get Nightbot set up tonight, Comrade Kenny just finished spending an hour radicalizing a former business partner, petty booze millionaire who's feeling the pinch. Wow, fucking right on. It's awesome, Kenny. Please tell the chat how you are doing it, because I'm sure you have a great way of talking to people about communism. So, Dr. Chrome, what did you say? I'm non-political. Is that bad or good? No one is non-political. To be non-political is to uphold the status quo. And when the status quo is fundamentally racist, is fundamentally sexist, is oppressive by nature for the rich, right? When the status quo is fascism, that right now is relaxed, easygoing, comfortable fascism for the people in charge, but that is ever so slightly, so slowly tiptoeing towards unstable fascism, which is your Mussolinis and such, right? To be apolitical is to support that. There is no two ways about it. So, if you think that the entirety of the government is full of liars and cheaters, then you're very possibly on the road to being like us, right? Because we fully understand that politicians are liars and cheaters, that they uphold a terrible system and that they don't actually work for us. We're on the same page, right? We just understand that it takes a revolution to overcome that we can't vote the right people into office. But we also understand that it's not something that we should just give up on, right? That taking on like a nihilistic, pessimistic type view of the world, right? We understand that things can be better. We understand that a better world is within our grasp. We just have to fight for it. So, some things to remember, all right? We are not the idealists. We communists are not the idealists. And I want y'all to internalize that as much as you possibly fucking can, all right? We are not the idealists. We are the ones who are speaking rationally. We are the ones who are looking at the material reality of the world, all right? Other people who say things like, oh, I just can't trust human nature, right? But then turn around and don't question the human nature of the ultra rich and the government who is bought out by them, right? That they think, oh, those people who are so rich, yeah, they're probably, they probably have our best interests at heart. The government is doing the best it can, right? That's idealism. So don't let somebody say that you're idealist. That's one of them things that I just refute, I reject right away. And maybe they continue to believe it, but I will say that I 100% always reject when someone says that I'm the idealist, because I'm the one who's actually looked at history. I'm the one who sees the through line from the beginning of the United States to now, right? I can see the class struggle that has been present, and I'm not buying a bunch of bullshit propaganda, right? Propaganda that is based on nothing. Because when you think about people talking about like things are getting better little by little, we're on our way, that ain't based on shit, right? But we can say very simply, like, okay, I believe that that's wrong, and the reason I understand that that's wrong is because I can look at all of these historical instances that prove that that's wrong, right? Continue. Yeah, the human nature thing is a fallacy, absolutely. So, but even if it is human nature, even if humans are fundamentally bad, then we need socialism. We cannot live in a world of capitalism if the human nature fallacy was actually true, right? So in any circumstance, that's some silliness. Another thing to remember, all right? We learn how to talk by talking. When we're babies, we learn how to talk by talking. When we're in school, we give speeches, we write papers, right? And the act of writing those papers is what kind of helps us become better writers, right? And even if we don't get, even if we get a shitty education, which so many of us do, even if we get a bad education, we still learn how to do these things by doing them even in our life after school, right? If you got a bad education, and you went out later and wanted to learn how to be a better writer, you did it through writing, right? Maybe you read Strunk and White, or maybe you read some other grammar and style book, right? But I doubt it. Chances are you just wrote a lot until you got better at it, right? So you get better at talking about communism by talking about communism. It's okay if you fuck up. Don't get flustered about it, right? Don't be mad at yourself, because we all do. I have had many conversations with people where at the end of the conversation, they left feeling like I am just a crazy tanky, or they left feeling like an angry person, right? So what I have gotten used to doing is leading with a lot of those positive things that I was talking about before, leading with all them things that I believe in, that I want, that I understand to be possible, that we are held back from for no reason, right? These are just some little tips and tricks that I've learned from talking to a lot of people. And there are things that you're going to learn too by talking to people, but you got to talk to people. All right. All right, Dr. Crum, you're going to get timed out one more time, buddy. Some of these Ben Shapiro zingers you're bringing in, I'm gonna let you sit and think about why we're not gonna have that on stream, and then when you come back in, please try to listen more than speak. That's one of the most important things you can do, is simply try to listen more than speak. All right. Anybody calling me a tank, you don't know what tankies are? Well, Exquisitor Vorbis, you have a good view. Not everybody has a good view. A lot of people have a less good view on me. Oh, hell yeah, California is very capitalist. Hell yeah, absolutely. Left flank's Lorax. Shit, what's up, buddy? I'm glad you're here. Um, so, continuing. I'm sorry, I get sidetracked. I appreciate y'all bearing with me while I'm adjusting my meds, while I'm getting my meds back on track and my brain is all fucked up. Y'all go. Hey, somebody drop the left flank vets link in the chat, please. I'm gonna get Nightbot set up today. All right, I promise I'm gonna get Nightbot set up. But in the meantime, somebody drop all the links for all the good people who's in the chat. Oh, Marcus is in the chat too. Holy shit! Look at that. Only person we're missing is Erica. Thank you, Lorax. I appreciate that. Got the Jeep State in the chat. There we go. Let me get that Jeep State going in the chat. Okay. Let me continue as well. And I know y'all told me to quit apologizing, but I can't help it. I gotta apologize whenever my brain's foggy. You know how it is. So, continue. You don't have to know everything. All right. People are gonna ask questions that you get stumped by. Happens to me all the time. And what I tell them is, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that one. What I can always come back to is, hey, even if this bad thing happened in the past that I don't have a good answer for, even if there is some potential flaw in communism that we haven't addressed yet, the point is that fundamentally, capitalism is made to benefit people who are not us, and it will always kill itself, right? Capitalism is in a death march. It will use up the environment, and it will squeeze us until we cannot have children and until we cannot feed ourselves, right? And many of y'all in the chat are probably saying, can't have children. I already can't have children. Well, guess what? We're already in that process of going beyond what Marx said is sustainable, right? Because the bare minimum for capitalism is to fund people enough that they can resupply the workforce, right? Which means having children. So if we can't pay enough to have kids nowadays, if people can't support even a small family nowadays, then you know shit is bad. All right. Yeah, that's where people talk about the death cult, necro-capitalism, right? As Rev Left Radio calls it. Yeah. So yeah, we really are in late stage capitalism, because if we can't do the fundamental thing that Marx says is the minimum that capitalism does, right? Then we are in the stage where there's going to be a revolution soon, right? When the population starts falling because people can't feed themselves, let alone have children, we are getting ever closer to a revolution. So, I mean, platypus trainer, I feel you. I'm fixed, so I know the feeling. Jess, exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, bad shit's coming down the pipe. There's no doubt about it. Okay, so finally, one last point here as far as the things to remember goes. You benefit by talking about your own political beliefs, right? For me, it has always been a clarifying force for me to sit and talk to people about shit and to have to read shit in order to explain shit, right? For me to have to reread a book several times in order for me to make a presentation on it, benefits me greatly. For me to synthesize the information down to these little slides benefits me, right? So all I got to say is, you talking to people about communism, you actually like coming out and giving your points, listening to the rebuttals, right? This benefits you. And I will say that Malcolm X talked about this quite a bit. You know, he talked about how he learned in debate club, you know, in prison, how to talk to people in a certain way, and that his preaching, his fishing, as he called it, looking for new converts, and then talking to people from the pulpit and trying to get people to join the Nation of Islam, right? When he talked about that, he talked about how how beneficial it was, you know, to clarifying the way that he could talk about things. The more he talked, the better he got at it, and the more he was able to use his brain in that way, to grow that muscle, right? So that's what we're doing here too. It is benefiting us to have these conversations. So don't just think about it as like doing your duty to God and your country, you know what I mean? To quote the Boy Scouts, think of it as doing something for yourself too. You are gaining a better understanding of what you hold the most dear, potentially in your life, to speak about it to other people, right? So, continue. Good shoplifting tips. What the hell are y'all talking about in chat? Elisa, yeah, this scarf dries my throat out something bad, but that's all right. You know what I was thinking? I've been thinking I'm gonna get a straw. I'm gonna get a silly straw, and I'm gonna feed it up underneath the scarf, and I'm gonna drink while I'm on screen. How fun would that be? Anyway, continuing. So, is it okay to just say socialism? Well, I think that if you are a communist and you just say socialist, right, you're going to have a hard time talking about what you actually believe. If you truly believe that there is no way out but revolution, if you truly believe that the U.S. government is a force for evil in the world, that it is a war machine that chews up other countries and spits them out, just so that they can be turned into a commodity, right? Where those other countries will have to buy our shit, our pre-made goods for a high dollar value, and we can buy their raw materials for a low dollar value, right? Where we go in, we rip apart their manufacturing, and then we say, oh, it's just because all of these poor third world countries, they just can't get their shit together. We're going to give them some loans to help them out, right? If you understand that the U.S. government does this on purpose to support U.S. businesses throughout the world and has for the last 50 years, right? You're going to have a hard time saying that we can vote our way to freedom. You're going to have a hard time saying that, democratic socialism and the like is the answer. So if you are a communist and you explain those things, right, then revolution is what makes sense. When you look at it on the face of it, revolution is what makes sense. So yeah, if revolution is what you're after, then just saying socialism really don't work with that, right? When you talk about radical reorganization of the economy and putting the means of production into the hands of regular folks, just saying socialism is kind of like when you talk about Elizabeth Warren, who also maybe calls herself a socialist, or you talk about even the Bernie Sanders campaign, right? They ain't really jiving with that program. So if that's your program, if the communist program is your program, you don't have a lot in common with a lot of them regular old Democrats, right? So saying you're a socialist, it may not be the truth, right? And the truth is valuable. Being honest with people is valuable because people can tell on a subconscious level. I think a lot of times people can tell when you're lying, when you're holding back. So don't hold back. Don't hold back. So also, this is very important. Chuds, MAGA chuds, but all Republicans really, they love when libs are trying to tiptoe around shit, right? They love when libs are trying not to offend anybody, when libs are trying to quote unquote reach across the aisle, right? These MAGA chuds feel like they have won. If they feel like you are trying to play to their bigotry, right, that you're trying to not spook them or scare them. I heard even saying like that word like that is a bad thing, so I'm gonna stop that. But if they feel like you are catering to their bullshit, they feel like they've won. You understand? If they feel like they've got your goat, if they feel like they have offended you, or if they feel like you are scared of offending them, the chuds feel like they have won, right? So yeah, don't do that. Don't play into their fears. State your truth plainly. Feel confident in it. Understand that they're going to come at you with some bullshit that don't mean anything, so you don't have to get riled up about it. You don't have to get upset about it, right? And when you are not emotionally affected by their deeply disturbing views, when you understand their deeply disturbing views better than they do, right? And you are simply spitting the truth to them, chuds get upset, but they listen, right? They start thinking that you're different from a liberal. And for a chud to think that you're different from a liberal matters, right? Because are we trying to get all chuds on our side? No, we're not. Are we trying to get MAGA people on our side? I don't think so, really. But libertarians, I even see y'all talking about libertarians in chat. Sorry about that, y'all. Hold on a second. I got to drink some water real quick. Yeah. Okay. Someone who believes in freedom, someone who really cares about democracy and personal responsibility and shit like that, like libertarians always talk about, right? Those type people, when you state very plainly and clearly how we live in something that is nothing like democracy, right? How our democracy is a total sham. When you talk to people like that, yeah, them people, they're gonna be hearing something for the first time in what you're talking about, right? Because it was only the chuds that was reaching out to those libertarian types before, right? The Democrats had nothing for them. The Democrats had nothing about true freedom and true personal responsibility and true taking care of each other, and it's funny to think that though they fear communists much more than they fear libs, we're actually significantly closer to what they say their ideal is, right? But in the end of the day, let me say one thing. At the end of the day, you do you. If you are a 90-pound queer person in the middle of the fucking red county, red town, right? And you're afraid to say the word communism because you're afraid it might actually produce a threat on your life. Well, shit. I ain't over here trying to tell you that you have to say communism instead of socialism. It's stronger to say communism, but I ain't saying you have to, all right? So watch out for your own safety. Take care of yourself, right? Take care of yourself. I I don't want to get in trouble for anybody getting into big trouble in the countryside, but I do want to say one thing, that if you do decide that you're going to say the word communism to people in the countryside and you want some moral support, you hit me up in the DMs. If I get back on Twitter, great. Otherwise over here. Otherwise, I'll give you my fucking email address and we will talk about what you're doing and I will give you moral support. I will hype you the fuck up, all right? If you talk about communism in the countryside and you just need that extra little bit of hype to make you feel like you can do it, right? Let me know because I will fucking hype you up. All right. So, some common question examples. What about human nature? I think we've talked about that one a fair bit. What about lifting people out of poverty? Well, capitalism has certainly lifted some people out of poverty, right? But it's also pushed people into poverty who have no reason to be in poverty. When you look at places like Africa, like so many different African countries that are very rich in material resources and in labor, when you have labor and you have natural resources, you have wealth. You understand? That's the basis of all wealth. The basis of all value is labor and nature, right? Now, certainly we can talk about how machines multiply the value of labor, and so getting like logistics and factories in place is very important. But fundamentally, labor and nature are the things that are the keys to wealth, right? So why is it that a country, or that that many different countries that have those things are kept so poor? The answer is fucking imperialism, right? Imperialism is the problem. Colonialism is the problem. So yeah, communism will lift people out of poverty and has lifted people out of poverty in ways that capitalism cannot, because the only thing that keeps capitalism alive is pushing people into poverty who have no reason to stay in poverty. What about innovation? Well, the USSR went from fucking ignorant dirt farmers, we can call, peasants, uneducated peasants, right? Went from peasants to beating the United States to space, beating the United States, who had Nazi scientists, rocket scientists from Operation Paperclip, right? They went from nothing to beating the U.S. into space. First probe, first animal, first round the globe trip, first man, first woman, first spacewalk, first probe on Venus, first probe on Mars. Right? There were a lot of fucking probes and firsts with the USSR space program, right? So they innovated quite a bit, is what I'm trying to say here. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So the innovation question is some silliness, you know what I mean? Gianibus, some people saying about the moon, right? I don't remember. I don't remember who was the first to put a probe on the moon, whether it was the United States or the USSR. But I will say, oh, I know you're joking about. You didn't strike me as somebody who was saying some bullshit. But I do want to say one thing. It is always really funny when I just spit all that whole fucking list of things to people about the USSR, and they're always like, "But we won the space race because we put boots on the moon first." It's like, uh, okay. Like I just said all them things, and you really got a response to any of that. So, holler at me in a bit whenever you figure out how putting boots on the moon is more important than all those other things that I just talked about. you know. Anyway, what about democracy? Well, I want you to think about this. A quote unquote one party system is the same as a no party system. All right. What that means is the government doesn't have these individual parties working against each other within it. What it has is people, right? And quote unquote cliques will form. People will champion certain ideas. So you'll have government, and the struggles within the government will be very different as far as the tactics and the way that things pass in the government. So if one little area, if we have a truly bottom up type government, then the people from the bottom, if they have a problem, if they have something that they want out of the government, they can send it up and it can get sent back down to all the other groups, right? So there's this motion back and forth. But if you want the president to do something, I'm sorry, baby, putting something on change.org ain't going to get the president's attention. Even if you get 5 million signatories on the damn thing, the president sees it or whatever, right? It don't matter because the people don't control the government. Millions of people don't control the government, right? Millions of people wanting the same fucking thing does not control the government, all right? So the party system, does not help us, right? So a one-party system and a multi-party system are very, very different. And actually, you get more democracy with a no-party system, right? Because the parties, the way that things are set up in our government, it's made so that the people don't matter. The institutions continue on even when the people change, right? So whoever is in the office of the president shouldn't matter so much to the economy. And up until now, that's been fairly true. Like Trump certainly shook some things up. But in general, the U.S. is set up such that the president is the figurehead, and a lot of shit gets blamed on him. But most of the shit that gets blamed on the president is not Congress's fault, like people like to say. It's changes in the market that oftentimes are based on what companies are doing, right? The big crashes that we have, that's not based on what the government has done. It's based a lot of times on what companies do, and then the government reacts to it, right? So the companies are the ones who are really pushing the needle on shit in this nation. Yeah. Platypus trainer, 10,000 petitions to Bernie making him keep the $15 minimum wage in the bill. I mean, Bernie, if he was ever deciding to take away the $15 minimum wage in the bill, right? Like that's our socialist politician, a person who won't even fight for poverty wages. You know what I mean? Like a lot of that shit is just like it's literally like manufactured in advance. Bernie says, "Okay, I'll take it out," and then he puts out there to his people like, "Okay, if we get a change.org type thing and we get a bunch of signatures, then I'll come out and say I listened to the signatures and now I'm doing this," right? Because people really need to believe that our progressive politicians are really the populist politicians of the people, and they're fucking not, right? They're not whatsoever. It's games. It's bullshit, right? It's kayfabe. Don't believe that shit. LPGWV, would multiple parties with ranked choice voting be more democratic? No. And the reason being, parties allow for a lot of arguing about bullshit that doesn't matter. Lenin talks about this quite a bit, and I think he's right. This idea that when you have a separate legislative and executive branch, we don't have anything like checks and balances. I mean, you can look at Trump. You can see that Trump was never checks and balanced out, right? In every opportunity that they had to get Trump out, either by using the Electoral College at first or by the 2 times that they tried to impeach him, right? Or any of the other things that they tried to do to rein him in, right? None of that shit worked. So checks and balances between branches of the government is bullshit, right? What we can say is that having an executive branch separate from a legislative branch allows argument to happen endlessly in the legislative branch, and for really direct decisions to be made by the executive branch, but for all of that shit to be bull, because really it's the corporations in the background making the decisions, right? So I ain't trying to have a government system where we have a lot of built-in bullshit, right? A lot of shit that is there just to make us think that we have options, just to make us think that somebody's championing our issues. You know what I'm saying? Having a combined government with no parties, simply having a government where individual issues are what make their way to the top, that sounds a whole lot better to me personally. But who knows how we're going to set things up, right? We're a long way away from that. I know the things that I really care about. The way the government is particularly set up is less important to me, besides getting the means of production pointed towards helping the regular people and getting things controlled by the government in such a way that they can eminent domain houses and they can and give them to the unhoused, where they can say insulin prices are $5 across the board now, and that's just the way that it is. You know what I mean? That's what I care about. If we end up with a parliamentary system somehow and it's still socialist, fuck it, whatever, right? But I just don't necessarily know that that's what's gonna happen. But yeah, no problem, LPGWV. Thank you for asking. So what about freedom? Do y'all believe in freedom? Do y'all care about freedom? Do you need freedom? Do you want freedom? Well, if you do, then you damn sure don't have it in the United States, right? When we talk about freedom of the press, are you able to say anything against the rich and powerful for long enough and loud enough? If you are a non-white person in the United States, no, they'll find a way to take you out. You'll have killed yourself in the back of a police car, handcuffed while the police car was on fire. You know what I mean? You simply cannot say that we have freedom of the press in the United States when all of our media is basically controlled by 5 people who are all rich as fuck. You know what I mean? You can't say that we have a right to bear arms when it is purposefully taken away from a third of all black men because they're somewhere in the process of the penal system, right? You can't say that we have abolished slavery in the United States for the same reason, right? All the freedoms that people talk about in the United States is all bullshit. We don't have those things. We do not have those freedoms. So, and what about progress? Finally, what about progress? So yeah, exactly, Peach. Are you free to walk at night without worrying you're going to be followed or attacked? No, not at all, right? So the freedoms that we talk about don't exist in the United States. And the more people that we get saying these things, that these freedoms do not exist and have never existed, and that is a lie, it is a insidious lie that people talk about them, the better. Straight up. So finally, what about progress, right? So progress is something that liberals love to talk about, right? They just love to talk about progress. We do not have that. Stop thinking of things like a steady progress up. We have to say that we have had moments where it's looked like something good was happening, but I like to think of our march to communism like winning a Super Bowl, all right? I generally don't like the politics as sports analogies, but stick with me for a second because I'm going to get real American. To win a Super Bowl, if you're starting from a really shit team, all right? Like let's say you're starting from, I'm not going to pick on the Browns because everybody picks on the Browns. Let's start with like, the Falcons after Mr. Dogfighter got kicked off the team, right? The Detroit Lions, yeah, right. Howdy, Sean. Welcome. Yeah, we gonna talk about the Falcons. I agree. Fuck the Falcons too. Hit good. As someone who is originally from Georgia, fuck them. But so after Michael Vick got kicked off the team, and we were basically left. The team was basically left with nothing. You had to rebuild, right? So the act of like putting money into something, the act of like trying to get good coaches and a team that works together and shit, right? Those are things that you have to do, even if you're starting from scratch, right? whether you're a team that is winning or you're a team that's starting from scratch, is something you have to do. So there's no progress where you can say, okay, well, the 1990s Falcons were bad, but every year the Falcons are just getting better and better, right? So so it's very important, right, to understand that that kind of attitude is it would be silly to apply it to something like football, right? If somebody said year by year, even when we've faced setbacks, we're still getting better. When you look and you see them losing game after game after game, you would say, okay, they lost. They're not getting better. We have to rebuild. The left is like that, right? We have had times where shit is good. We've had times where we've had strong labor unions, where we've had millions of people in labor unions in the United States. We've had times where we had tens of thousands of people in the Communist Party, right, back in the 20s, in the 30s. So we've had good times. We've had times where we were like the Super Bowl winning team of the past, or maybe not the Super Bowl winning team, but close to it, right? We got to the playoffs. But we ain't there right now. So similarly, when we talk about progress for different groups, for the marginalized groups within the United States, right? It's not this steady progress up. It's like shit gets good, shit gets bad, but we never make it to actual liberation for our people. We never actually make it to winning a Super Bowl, right? So we have to say like, hey, yeah, we're starting over, but just like sports teams start over, right? You don't look at it and say, oh, fuck, we're starting over. Let's just end this team. Let's just fucking throw it all away, right? No. What we do is we start over and we build up again, right? Even if we're building up from nothing, even if the game has totally changed, right? Even if the plays, the playbook of other teams is totally different from the playbook of the past, and we have to throw away all the glory as far as like reusing playbooks, right? That's okay. That's what we just do, right? So we on the left are rebuilding our football team of a revolutionary movement. Abish Punjabi, thank you so much. I appreciate you following. So anyway, I apologize for the sports metaphor, but I hope that makes sense as far as like showing how silly it is to talk about incremental progress when really life is a lot more like building up a sports team. Okay. So let's talk about some common problem examples, right, that people bring up when you're trying to talk to them about communism. So the starvation thing we've talked about. I think authoritarianism we've talked about pretty good, right, for a little while. So let's talk about government collapse. You can cite many times where there has been a democratically elected socialist government, such as in Indonesia or Bolivia, right, and they have tried their damnedest to push in troops and money and propaganda and fuck with the system through sanctions, right? Anything they had to do, put up the dictators, right? Allow for terrible, terrible things to happen, right? So yeah, government collapse can absolutely be pinned on the United States, specifically through the CIA, many times in many different countries. But let's say you just want to talk about, like, say, the USSR, right? Well, the government spent literally billions of dollars in the beginning of the USSR to put boots on the ground soldiers, and they got fought off, right? Same thing happened in China. But throughout the years, like during the Cold War, they were constantly, like the US was constantly threatening to do things like nuke the USSR, to have invasions, right? There was propaganda that was pushed, and there was a military buildup that we had never seen before, right? So similarly, they got some people into the top offices, like the CIA got control of certain top offices and was able to influence people by, now I'm not necessarily saying that like people like Gorbachev was a CIA agent, but what I am saying is that like there were people who were well respected who were very influenced by CIA propaganda, right? So people who started like the Glasnost and Perestroika programs, and people who like influenced the academics to make it more trendy to talk shit about the USSR and say that they could that we could have both socialism and capitalism together. Like that's what those kind of propaganda talking points is really where the U.S. shines in a lot of ways, right? Like it does brute force very well, but it also does very well with the subtle shit. So Government collapse absolutely cannot be blamed on the socialist countries when you have the full might of the United States economy pushing towards those governments to collapse. Right? So those are the kind of things that I tell people when they bring up these common problem examples. We talked about genocide. I think we've talked a little bit about dogmatism as far as like don't do it yourself, right? I don't quote unquote uphold Mao and Stalin. I think that Mao and Stalin had good ideas, but I can admit whenever they've done something wrong. So proving verbally that you are not a dogmatist, not saying it so that you can make people feel comfortable and playing that shit up so that you can assuage their fears, right? Because I told you before, we can't do that because chuds love that. But rather, simply not being a dogmatist is important, right? People get turned off whenever you are unable to ever admit anything wrong in any previous government. So, also people who talk about the U.S. military strength, people who say, "Oh, we'll never ever be able to have a revolution because the U.S. military is too strong." Well, first of all, we can talk about unequal warfare abroad and how the U.S. military has absolutely been held back in places that it did not want to be held back, right? Many people will say things like, "Oh, they were just trying to sell more bombs and guns, and so they were only pretending to be held back." Well, there were certain times where the U.S. did not want to be held back, and they were absolutely held back. So the U.S. military is not infallible. I think there's people in the chat who can say the military is not infallible. But yeah, absolutely, you can read U.S. military handbooks that talk about, guerrilla warfare and unequal warfare and how, they have wanted to stop insurgencies many times, and the introduction to the more modern version of Mao's guerrilla warfare has a Marine Corps. I forget what rank the guy is, but anyway, he's talking about how once an insurgency gets dug into the population, it cannot be extracted. It's there. There is a certain tipping point where you will not be able to stop an insurgency, right? He's talking about it openly. So yeah, thinking that the U.S. military is the end all be all, and that it can stop an internal communist revolution, a lot of people in the military are going to have a hard time. Firing at U.S. citizens, right? They're going to have a hard time being indoctrinated to hate U.S. citizens. So something to think about. We don't have to just admit, like they'll always be like, admit that that if a revolution kicked off today, it would fail. It's like, yeah, of course. I'm talking to you, ain't I? Right? I'm trying to tell you about communism for maybe the first time in your fucking life. Of course, we'd fail right now because regular people don't know the truth about communism. But give it a couple years. Give it a couple years where people have been treated terribly, when even white people start realizing how bad things are, whenever we start having actual starvation and people dying of not having water and shit in the streets, right? Give it a couple years and we'll see how ready we are for revolution. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, exactly, TMKF. He's a brigadier general. All right. Right on, Big Sandwich. Hey, I'm really glad to see you in the chat. Thank you for piping in. Piping up and tuning in. Okay, so let me just talk you through some things that work for me, right? I talk about the very basics of communism. I give a definition of communism. My specific definition that I say communism is when the people own the means of production, right? A classless, moneyless society. And more specifically, it is the vehicle for the liberation of the proletariat, right? The liberation of regular people. So communism includes many things that require a bit longer of a definition simply because it is this vehicle for liberation for regular people, right? So I like to have definitions for things that I can pull out. And sometimes people say, well, I don't think of capitalism as, this necro-capitalism, imperialism that you're talking about. I think of capitalism as trade between individuals, trade between countries, right? And what you can say is, that's not the modern world, right? We are not going to go back in time to when we were, mercantile workers in our tiny huts and we are, trading chickens for wheat, right? That's not how things work in the modern world. Imperialism is the inevitable end of capitalism, period. So, Tempest, talking about the religious persecution thing. I think that's very easy to talk about, right? Was there at times religious persecution? Absolutely, right? I don't like some people talk about how Stalin treated the Jews and like some of that was Khrushchev's bullshit, but some of it I read on and I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Stalin did some bad things to the Jews. He very well may have, you know what I mean? Um, but we can definitely say that religious persecution happens on a de facto basis in the United States constantly. The simple fact that we have synagogue bombings, that we have mosque bombings on a truly regular basis in this country, shows that there are things within the like especially when we know that the FBI spies on all of us and they can integrate into leftist organizations very easily, right? COINTELPRO shows how well the FBI gets involved with organizations that are not violent whatsoever, right? So they can stop that shit and they don't, right? So we can say that because the right is not policed anywhere near the way that the left is, that the violence against people that comes from this fascist standpoint is acceptable to a certain degree by the powers that be, straight up, right? So, continuing. Being passionate but firm and never apologetic or fearful of my message. I think I've talked about that, right? Yeah, shit. Y'all talking about indigenous indigenous persecution. Um, I mean, y'all. I'm sure y'all could go for days and days on how the United States has persecuted indigenous spiritual beliefs, right? As far as like every single like talking about sacred spaces to indigenous peoples, and as soon as some kind of mineral is found underneath it that they want, they disregard any kind of treaty that they had, any kind of agreement, and they try to move people off the land immediately. And if the people don't want to move, what do? They fucking kill them, right? Our indigenous comrades who have been fighting tooth and nail for literal centuries just to survive, but also to protect the land and to protect the not the resources, but rather the biodiversity on the land as well, right? These are things that we have to talk about, right? That like religious persecution against indigenous folks has existed from the beginning, right? Indigenous anyway. So, all that being said, the fact that certain things have been harder in communist countries in the past, we don't need to deny, but we can simply say that capitalism will never allow, if it's profits versus your deeply held beliefs will get thrown out. Straight up. They will fight you, they will kill you, they do not care. You do not have religious freedom in the United States. You can have quiet personal religious freedom, right? But you cannot ever have any kind of open religious freedom. And when we talk about shit like worship together, which really religious freedom means being able to worship together, right? Then a lot of people don't have that in the United States. Thank you, Anarchist Laboratory Sean, for talking things out. And look, platypus, I'm an atheist myself, right? But a lot of times when it comes to other people talking about their own personal beliefs, I think it can be better just to take a moment and listen, right? Not to try to speak over, especially minority groups who we're not members of. It's important to try to learn, even if you start from a place of disagreeing. Like, give them a chance to teach you something, right? Because when your mouth's moving, you're not learning. So a lot of times when I'm on people like Anarchist Laboratory Sean's stream or Comrade Kenny's stream, I don't talk too much, right? Because I'm trying to listen, I'm trying to learn, and I think that's the move. That's what we have to do. You know what I mean? If we're not doing that, then especially as white folks, we're doing ourselves a disservice, but we're certainly causing problems for other people and making them not want to be our allies, right? Putting on an extra burden onto them who are putting an extra burden onto the marginalized who are just trying to live. So that's not something we're going to do. We're going to try to listen to our marginalized comrades and never speak over them. So All right, so let's say you're my friend, right? I actually think that we're getting on to 2 hours, and part of the reason is I've kind of done it through the entire conversation here. I've been telling y'all how I talk to people, right? So rather than putting it all together, I think we can just say, okay, smart guy. We can just say, does anybody in the chat have any questions that you think I missed, right? Do y'all have anything that you've heard before or that you've thought of before when you was a lib, when you was trying to confront communism in your own head? Are there things that I didn't cover today? Because, I'm willing to talk it out. I think it's important to try to talk out as many different things as we can. And there are finally, there are things, oh, damn. Okay. I'm going to come back to decolonization later. But first, Grim, let me talk about this. Doctors and McDonald's workers getting paid the same. Well, let's talk about under socialism, under the quote unquote lower stage of communism versus under full communism, under the higher stage of communism. Under socialism, people can get paid a little bit more, right? People who are working harder, working longer, whatever, they can get paid more. We can have a system of, raises. We can have a system of different salaries for people, right? And that's fine. Later on, under full communism, we will do away with currency, so the concept of getting paid more won't matter. But then again, we will have totally reimagined work in general, right? So maybe some people will want to be doctors and some people will want to be food employees. It will not be set up like a McDonald's, of course. It'll be set up like everybody's got their own little restaurant, maybe, right? Or they'll be working and they will be appreciated, right? Like I know so many people who say, you know what I want to do? I want to farm. I know so many people who say, I want to cook. In the in the commune, I want to cook, right? And the reason they don't do it now is because they don't get paid for it well enough. They don't get taken care of. They know that they will not have their needs met if they try to go cook somewhere, right? But under communism, they would have those needs met. They would absolutely have those needs met, right? And we would look at things fundamentally differently. We would look at all different jobs as meeting needs in some way, right? So I want y'all to think about how a doctor does something important, but a farmer does something important too. And someone who takes out the trash does something important. Someone who manufactures the cogs that help keep factories running does something important, right? Something like a blacksmith. There you go, Tempest. So yeah, I think it's very important to understand that like these jobs are going to be seen as equally respectable. They're going to be hard, right? They're all like, or maybe they will, maybe they won't. Who knows? But these jobs are going to be well respected, and so you're going to do them out of love, right? But under socialism, when people are not necessarily at that place yet mentally, right? Yeah, doctors are going to get paid more. But what we can all say is that nobody works 5,000 times harder than anybody else, right? Nobody works 100,000 times harder than anybody else. Elon Musk does not work 100,000 times harder than your average garbage man. Elon Musk did not invent 100,000 times more shit than your average engineer working for him, right? What these people do at the top, the things that they do the best is they find new ways to extract labor value from their workers, right? They find new ways to exploit their workers. They're very good at that, right? And that's why they get paid so much. At the end of the day, innovations only happen occasionally. The companies that get rich are the ones that are better than the other companies at extracting more from their employees. Labor value drives everything, right? Innovation only drives immediate bumps, but everything equalizes with time. So the day-to-day winners of the game of capitalism are the ones who find new ways of exploiting their people. All right? Good night, Marks. Thanks for coming by. So if y'all, I think that's very important to point out, that the reason Jeff Bezos has gotten so rich is not because of his original innovation with logistics and such. He is rich because he makes his employees pee in bottles and and not take breaks, right? And work in sweatshops, finds these ways of forcing people to be faster and faster and faster with their jobs. All right. Yeah, hell yeah, Janibus. That's good. Burst that bubble. All right. So, is there any other questions that I missed in the chat? Um, do, 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 do. So finally, okay, I don't see any more questions. So I do want to talk about one thing. I haven't hit on the decolonization aspect too much today, and that is something that I want to hit on quite a bit, just for 1 minute here. In the middle 1800s, there was a Queer of Peace, welcome. In the middle 1800s, there was a proto-socialist type movement in the United States. There was a labor movement that was kind of on its way to becoming somewhat like the socialist movements in Europe. It failed. And the reason that it failed is because it was fundamentally racist. If you read, for example, Angela Davis's Women, Race, and Class, you'll see that like a lot of these earlier labor movements were very racist. If you read Settlers, you'll see that the early labor movements were extremely racist. And that's why they fail, right? So if you're not focused on liberation for all, your message rings hollow. People can hear that shit. And your most exploited people, the people with finally the most revolutionary potential, gonna tune you out, right? So if we don't have decolonization as a fundamental part of our communist program, then we ain't got shit. We're the same as those middle 1800s folks who are trying to make proto-socialism while not caring too much about slavery, right? So I think that as long as we are putting this decolonization foot first, right, then we will understand that the organization of production is also decided by the rich. The way that jobs are set up, the way that people interact with each other at work, the way that some people are allowed to do some jobs and other people are allowed to do other jobs, right? And we can very easily say that the organization of production is racist. It's bigoted. It hurts women. It hurts trans people. It hurts minorities. Absolutely, there's so many people. Anybody who's marginalized is marginalized in the workplace as well as in the rest of the world, right? And maybe much of the marginalization happens first in the workplace or at school and then in the workplace, right? So we can say that systemic racism and the colonization of groups within the United States, as in like we have nations of people, nations of races within the United States who are treated as separate nations. They are colonized within the country, right? So class reductionism ignores all of this. Class reductionism totally throws that shit out the window and just says, okay, we're all hurt by the rich, so we all need to come together and ignore that shit, and it'll all get fixed as long as we're fighting against the rich. And that's bullshit, right? We can all agree that that's bullshit. Because even Stalin said the organization of production is a part of the means of production, right? Means of production by itself does not mean just like factories sitting without people. The people doing the work in certain ways is a part of the means of production, right? So class reductionism is silliness. It's anti-Marxist because it's not dialectical. And that's all I had to say about that. Oh boy. All right, platypus. Well, just you ain't gonna get kicked, but I'm gonna time you out again. So don't come back in and say, hey, I demand to have myself heard. You know what I mean? Like, that's lib shit. That is lib shit. Don't do that. Yeah, exactly, anarchist laboratory Sean. Swapping out communism for capitalism without addressing systemic problems of bigotry is just swapping out one system of abuse for another, and I will say it won't happen. We literally will not get to a revolution if we don't address these issues, right? And when I say address, I don't mean just talk through them. I mean have it as a part of the core of our program. If it's not a part of the core of our program simply won't happen, right? we'll get a little bit of energy and then we'll peter out. You know what I mean? Jason Voorhees, how are you supposed to even talk to class reductionists? They all seem dug into that. Well, I would say explain to them the organization of production plus the means of production is what is the sum total of the means of production. Work through the historical materialism chapter from Dialectical and Historical Materialism by Stalin. Hopefully they'll see the light. You know what I mean? Because it's not that difficult of a concept that I just described, right? It really ain't that difficult. Yeah, exactly, Elijah. There's no reason to trust us otherwise. If we're still maintaining a racist system as we talk about socialism, why the fuck would any marginalized group trust us? Why would they ever trust us? So, finally, talking about land back. What every social, this is my opinion, and we have some indigenous comrades in the chat, so I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on land back. I mean, you talk about it on your streams, and I try to listen, and I think the core idea is a concept of a USAA is ridiculous, right? The concept that that we are not going to have a land back, that all these like land back type issues will happen under one single government, and that we'll get the buy-in of the native peoples, but that they will they will come to the table. They'll have a seat at the table, right? Any kind of talk like that is missing the fucking point, right? So many people have said things like you can't have treaties, you can't have agreements on stolen land, right? And I think that fundamentally that is a good point. The Zapatistas say that the main thing that many people fear is indigenous rule, that they fear that the indigenous people are going to treat the colonizers like the indigenous people were treated, right? So what the line should be, what people like me should talk about is I don't know exactly how the government is going to be set up in the future. I know that indigenous people should have total control of the land, right? But what does that mean? Are they going to kick all of us out? I've never heard an indigenous person say that their plan on day one is to kick everybody out. Where do black people fall into this? Where do where do mixed people fall into this? A lot of people are not pure blood Native American, as some people say. And it is always white people who get extremely caught up in this concept of what percentage Native American are you, right? I've heard Native American people say they determine who is in the tribe and who is not in the tribe, right? They don't look at DNA tests to determine who is in the tribe. So yeah, exactly. Sean says nobody's getting kicked out by the natives. They're not going to evict anybody. They're not colonizers. So that's the point, right? The point is that the government is going to be wholly different than the way that it is set up now, right? And we are going to have justice for all. And what's going to happen is we are going to agree on something that actually gives justice to everybody, right? We're not saying that white folks are going to give the natives a seat at the table, right? That's a fundamentally different approach. When we say that justice will be served, people will be taken care of, and however it falls out, right, is going to be how it falls out, is a different approach, right? For white people to step back and say, maybe I don't know everything, right? Yeah, blood quantum is a white government thing. Look, my comrades in the chat telling it like it is. So yeah, what we can say very easy, justice comes from below. Hell yeah. What we can say very easily is that we will be fighting for people's needs to be met. We will be fighting for justice. We will be fighting for an end to exploitation, right? And the government is going to be set up in accordance with that. And if you're scared, if you don't know exactly how that looks and you need everything to be planned right now, then you need to look at that, right? Because this white person way of demanding that you understand everything whenever we're nowhere near actually having the government set up, we're nowhere near a movement that's ready to talk about this kind of shit, right? That's just trying to control the conversation. So let it be. Let it be. Decolonization is also about abolishing whiteness because it was only made to protect settler white supremacy, right? So there's shit we got to figure out, right? People, I think that this conversation about decolonization is something that um, that our indigenous friends have been talking about for a long time, but a lot of us white folks have just recently started thinking about, right? So as long as we can recognize that decolonization has to be the core of the movement, that's a good place to start, right? When we recognize that imperialism and colonization is the primary contradiction of our time, when that is what is really driving so much of the problems of the world, right? Then we can put decolonization at the core and we can figure some shit out from there, right? So first, white people just need to get comfortable with the idea and just keep it as the core of our movement, right? So it's similar to when people say white people shouldn't be the leaders of the movement. When people say white people should not even be the leaders of local groups, right? That's something that I didn't understand at first, but nowadays I get it. The voice of color theory is very accurate. So people like me, we need to be helping. We need to, like, I teach here, but as an equal, right? I consider myself to be not a leader whatsoever. Just because people follow me on people used to follow me when I had a Twitter, but just because people follow me on Twitter don't mean that I am a voice for the left, right? I'm just a person, and I think some people like me, and that's great, but I ain't trying to set myself up as a leader. And I think more white people need to say, I am not a leader, straight up, you know? So, yeah. I'm TMKF. I'm gonna take off too. I think it's a good. I think that's a good ending point. So I really appreciate all y'all coming out. Oh shit. That's really cool. Thank you, Dorian Sapiens. I appreciate that. Inferno Silver, thank you for following. Oh shit, I'm getting. Oh yeah, a raid. Yes, a raid. Thank you. Yes, Exquisite Vorbis. We got to figure out who we're gonna raid. Thank you, Symphilies, for following. Who's online right now? Who can we raid right now? Let me take a look. I don't even know where my phone. My phone's in my pocket. I mean, a lot of the people who I want to raid are in the chat right now. So I gotta. Comic. I haven't done Comic Con in a long time. Let's see. Pinko the Bear is on. Yeah, you know what? Pinko is on, and Pinko only has 16 viewers. So let's go into Pinko's chat. Thank you. I appreciate y'all. Tempest, I appreciate you. Thank you, Janibis. I really appreciate you coming. Really appreciate everybody who stuck around and listened to me bullshit while my meds were off and I was struggling to put words together. So big love to all of y'all. We gonna raid. Oh shit. I misspelled Pinko the Bear. Oh shit, hold on a second, y'all. Raid nope, one in, not two. Pinko the Bear. There we go. Alright. Who's ready to raid? Who's ready to cause some problems? I appreciate all y'all. Thank you for coming to the stream. I will see y'all in the very near future. Alright, let's do this thing.